If the United States broke apart today, four new countries would immediately emerge as major global economies. California, Texas, New York, and Florida already produce more goods and services than many sovereign nations. We simply know them as parts of one much larger country. California alone recorded a nominal GDP of more than $4 trillion in 2025. As an independent nation, it would rank among the 5 largest economies in the world. Texas and New York would also sit near the top, while Florida would have an economy comparable in size to some of the wealthiest nations in Asia. Even Vermont, the smallest state economy in the country, still produces nearly $50 billion worth of goods and services every year. That is comparable to several sovereign nations with their own governments, currencies, and seats at the United Nations. But those numbers exist while all 50 states remain connected through a single market, one currency, and one federal government. If the lines between them suddenly became international borders, would they still be as rich as they are today? Every comparison in this video uses nominal GDP, which measures the total value of all goods and services produced in 1 year. It does not represent the amount of money held by a state government. It measures the overall size of economic activity within that state, and California, Texas, New York, and Florida are only the beginning. California sits at the top with an economy worth around $4.25 trillion. That puts the West Coast state on the same level as some of the world's largest economies. Its annual output has even surpassed that of the United Kingdom. That enormous figure comes from an unusually diverse economy. California is home to Silicon Valley, the world's leading technology hub, as well as Hollywood's global entertainment industry. It also has advanced manufacturing, large-scale agriculture, and 2 enormous ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach, which serve as major gateways for trade across the Pacific. Together, these industries generate an economy larger than that of most countries on Earth. Texas ranks second, with an economy worth roughly $2.90 trillion. Oil and natural gas remain major drivers, especially in western Texas and along the Gulf Coast. But the state is no longer dependent on energy alone. Its economy also includes aerospace, information technology, chemical production, finance, and advanced manufacturing. Much of that activity is concentrated in 4 major metropolitan areas: Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, and San Antonio. New York comes third at around $2.46 trillion. Much of that economy is centered on New York City, one of the world's leading hubs for finance, media, commercial real estate, corporate services, and wholesale trade. Economic activity then extends across the rest of the state through universities, hospitals, manufacturing, agriculture, and technology companies. Florida follows with an economy of approximately $1.83 trillion, putting it close to the total size of South Korea's economy in 2025. Florida may be best known for beaches, theme parks, and tourism, but those industries tell only part of the story. The state also relies on international trade, real estate, healthcare, aviation, transportation, finance, and the steady arrival of new residents from other parts of the country. If California, Texas, New York, and Florida each became independent, all 4 would immediately join the upper ranks of the global economy. The trillion-dollar group is completed by Illinois, with an economy of around $1.20 trillion, and Pennsylvania at roughly $1.06 trillion. Illinois depends heavily on Chicago, a major center for trade, transportation, finance, logistics, and corporate services. Pennsylvania is powered by 2 large economic regions around Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, supported by healthcare, education, energy, manufacturing, and financial services. And the scale becomes even more surprising once we move beyond the trillion-dollar states. States that rarely receive global attention still produce more economic output than many independent countries. Below the trillion-dollar group are 14 states with economies worth between $500 billion and $1 trillion. Ohio sits closest to the trillion-dollar mark, followed by Georgia, Washington, North Carolina, New Jersey, and several others. As independent countries, all of them would immediately become significant players in the global economy. Their size also shows that America's economic strength is not limited to coastal megacities. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, Real GDP increased across all 50 states during 2025, although growth rates varied from one state to another. Washington, for example, produces nearly $895 billion in annual output from technology, Pacific trade, aerospace, agriculture, and professional services. That is close to the economic scale of some major European countries. Even though Washington has a population of only around 8 million people, Massachusetts produces approximately $820 billion with just 7.15 million residents. Its economy is supported by elite universities, hospitals, technology firms, research institutions, financial services, and a large biotechnology sector. Michigan, with an economy of around $730 billion, produces more than Belgium. The automotive industry remains central to the state, covering everything from vehicle assembly and component manufacturing to the logistics networks surrounding the Great Lakes. Arizona's economy sits in roughly the same range as Singapore's, while Minnesota approaches the size of Norway's. Neither state is usually described as a center of the global economy, yet each produces hundreds of billions of dollars in goods and services every year. Another 12 states fall into the range between $250 billion and $500 billion. Their economic foundations vary widely. Wisconsin depends on manufacturing, agriculture, food processing, and healthcare. Louisiana is supported by ports, energy, petrochemicals, and the trade routes of the Mississippi River. Nevada remains closely associated with casinos and tourism, but its economy is also expanding through logistics, mining, data centers, and rapid population growth. The next group, with GDP figures between $100 billion and $250 billion, generally includes states built around one major city or a few specialized industries. Compared with California or Texas, their economies appear relatively small. By global standards, however, an economy worth hundreds of billions of dollars is still large enough to exceed the output of many sovereign nations. Only 7 states fall below $100 billion. North Dakota, for example, produces around $81.9 billion, despite having a population of only about 799,000. That is possible because its energy industry and large agricultural sector generate an enormous amount of output relative to the size of its population. A similar situation can be found in Alaska, with an economy of roughly $75 billion, and Wyoming, which produces more than $52 billion, despite having fewer than 600,000 residents. Vermont sits at the bottom of the list with an economy of approximately $48.35 billion. That still places it slightly above Bahrain and close to several other small independent economies. In other words, even the smallest state economy in the United States generates about as much economic activity as some sovereign countries, but total GDP can be misleading. Large states usually have more people, while smaller states divide their economic output among far fewer residents. Once population enters the calculation, the rankings begin to change. If California became an independent country, would every Californian automatically become one of the wealthiest people in the world? Not necessarily. Total GDP only measures the size of all economic activity within a territory. It does not account for how many people live there. That is where GDP per capita becomes useful. Imagine 2 households that each earn $100,000 a year. One household has 2 people, while the other has 5. The total income may be identical, but the amount available per person feels very different. The same principle applies to states and countries. California has the largest state economy in America, but it also has the largest population, at around 39.36 million people. That is well above Texas at 31.71 million, Florida at 23.46 million, and New York at approximately 20 million. Once GDP is divided by population, New York moves ahead with around $123,000 per person. Massachusetts follows at approximately $115,000, while Washington reaches around $112,000. California, despite having the largest economy overall, produces roughly $108,000 per person. North Dakota provides one of the most striking examples. Its total economy is worth only around $82 billion, far below the largest states, but its population is under 800,000. Once that economic output is divided among such a small population, North Dakota's GDP per capita rises to approximately $102,000, close to California's level. Still, a high GDP per capita does not automatically mean every resident is wealthy. The figure does not reveal who actually receives the income generated by the economy. It also does not account for the cost of housing, healthcare, transportation, or other everyday expenses. In reality, states with very high GDP per capita often come with extremely high living costs as well. So the answer depends on how wealth is measured. By total economic size, California remains number 1. By GDP per capita, New York, Massachusetts, and Washington move ahead, while lightly populated North Dakota rises far above its position in the total GDP rankings. Yet all of these figures describe states operating inside the United States. Independence would change many of the conditions that make those numbers possible. No available statistic can tell us exactly what would happen if the United States broke into 50 separate countries. This has never happened, and the outcome would depend heavily on the agreements created after separation. Today, goods can cross state lines without international tariffs. Workers can move from one state to another without visas. Highways, railroads, ports, power grids, and payment systems all operate as parts of one national network. The U.S. Constitution gives the federal government the authority to regulate interstate commerce. It also prevents states from issuing their own currency and limits their ability to impose import or export duties without federal approval. Those rules help preserve the United States as one enormous market, even though every state maintains its own government and tax policies. Once state lines became international borders, each new country would have to create its own trade rules. They could form a tariff-free economic union to keep goods flowing smoothly. But if such an agreement failed, every stage of production that crossed a border could face inspections, additional paperwork, different standards, and new costs. A vehicle, for example, might use steel produced in one state, electronic components made in another, and then be assembled and sold somewhere else. If every step became an international transaction, even one additional border cost could raise the final price or influence where companies choose to build their factories. Currency would create another major challenge. All 50 states currently use the US dollar and are connected to the Federal Reserve, which manages monetary policy and supports the national payment system through services such as ACH, FedWire, and FedNow. A newly independent country could continue using the dollar, but it would have no influence over decisions made by the Federal Reserve. The alternative would be to create a new currency. That would require establishing a central bank, building foreign exchange reserves, designing banking regulations, and earning the confidence of financial markets from scratch. The relationship with the federal government also carries enormous financial value. The U.S. Government Accountability Office estimated that the federal government distributed around $1.2 trillion to state and local programs in 2025. That money supported healthcare, transportation, education, disaster relief, and many other public services. The amount received varies from one state to another. If the states became independent, that funding would not necessarily disappear overnight, but its future would have to be renegotiated through complicated new agreements. Each new country would also have to take greater responsibility for funding health programs, retirement benefits, highway maintenance, and emergency disaster relief that are currently supported by the federal government. National debt, military bases, federal buildings, dams, national parks, and research facilities would also have to be divided. That process could take years because the value of assets and financial obligations differs greatly from one region to another. Landlocked states would face an additional problem. They would need guaranteed access to seaports through neighboring countries. Today, a truck from Colorado or Kansas can travel to the coast without any international transit agreement. After independence, the same journey could depend on political and trade relations with every country along the route. California, Texas, New York, and several other large states would begin with stronger foundations because their economies are highly diversified. Smaller states might also remain successful if they had high incomes, stable budgets, or open trade relationships. But a large GDP would not automatically solve the challenges of currency, debt, defense, and public services. If the old connections were preserved through a shared dollar, open trade routes, and visa-free movement, the economic disruption could remain limited. If the new borders made it harder for goods, workers, and money to move, current levels of prosperity could fall quickly. Success would depend on keeping trade routes open, financing public needs, and maintaining stable relationships with neighboring countries. The winners would be determined by what they managed to build after independence, not only by the impressive numbers they started with. If America's 50 states became independent countries, several would immediately emerge as global economic giants. Even the state with the smallest GDP would begin with a larger economy than many existing nations. But today's GDP figures were created while businesses, workers, goods, and capital could move freely inside one country without crossing international borders. That means the most valuable asset these states possess may not be their economic output, natural resources, or industries. It may be the United States itself.